Hello students, in this video we are going to see the embedded firmware development languages. So in previous video we have seen the embedded firmware development approaches we have seen. So there are two types of approaches, that is the firmware development approaches are the superloop based approach and the embedded OS based approach. We have seen that. Now we are going to see the firmware development languages here. So what are the languages we are going to use for the embedded firmware development? Okay. So meaning of this one is what are the languages we are going to use? Okay. Here what are the languages we are going to use for the firmware development? Which firmware? That is the firmware for the embedded system. Okay. Firmware here means the software you can think. Okay. That means we are going to develop a software part for your embedded system, and for that software part what are the languages we are going to use, that is what we are going to see in this video. So you can see that we can use either a target specific processor or controller language or a target processor or controller independent language. So either you can choose a target specific, you can see here, target specific processor or controller language, or we can say that target specific processor controller dependent language also we can call. So this is the dependent language. It's generally known as assembly level language or low level language, or we can choose a target processor or controller independent language. So here these are the independent languages, that is C, C++, Java, etc. So these are the commonly known as high level languages. So here actually we have two types of languages available for designing embedded firmware. So that is we have either a low level language or an assembly level language, we call that, and or we have a high level language. So either you can develop your embedded operating system or embedded firmware by using the assembly code or by using the high level language code. So the assembly code means what we are going to write the programs in the part A. So the .s programs you have written, or all those are the assembly codes. Okay, and whatever the programs what we are going to write in the part B, so all they are the C programs, that is the .c codes we have written there. So like that, either you can use both high level language, that is C language, or you may use C++, Java for developing an embedded firmware, or you can use the basic assembly level language for designing a firmware part. Okay. So if you consider the first one, that is assembly level language based development. So that means here we are going to develop a firmware with the help of assembly level language. Okay. And one important point here you have to note is actually this assembly level language is a human readable notation. So you can read and you can understand that what is the meaning of that instruction here. So like in part A programs you have written this move R0, R1. So this instruction, by looking at that you can refer that what the instruction is going to do, or you can understand that what this instruction is going to perform. So it is going to perform the move operation. So that is the contents of the register R1 is copied or moved to the register R0. That is the contents of the register R1 is moved or copied to the register R0. So by looking at this instruction you are going to see that what is that code that instruction is going to perform. So that's why if you take any assembly level language, so that can be a human readable notation. So by that instruction you can read what is that going to do, and that is what we are calling it as this is a human readable notation of the machine language. So that is, this is the human readable notation of the machine language, and this language is processor or controller dependent. Again, that is the point I have mentioned in the above point. Okay, so this language is processor or controller dependent, and assembly program written for one processor or controller will not work with the others. So if you consider, we are writing a assembly code. Consider I am going to write add.s program for your LPC 2148. So that is your ARM7 based target processor, right? So we are writing a program that is add function, that is add.s file for this target processor LPC 2148. There is one more microcontroller available, that is 8051. So if you are writing this file for add s for this target processor, then this add s file or this code, it will not work for 8051. Both 8051 and LPC 2148 uses the assembly code only, but the code written for the different target processors will not match, because the architectures of that changes. Here the architecture of 8051 is different, and here the architecture of LPC 2148 is different. That's why even if I have written the same code and even we are using the assembly level language only for both the target processors, the architectures and specification for both the target processors are different. That's why whatever the program you are writing, that will not execute on the 8051 processor here, because you are considered the specification for LPC 2148 for this code, and you have written this program, that is adding program. Okay, so that's why that is what mentioned here. This language or processor controller is dependent. It is dependent, and assembly program written for the processor or controller will not work with others. Okay, that is what we have mentioned here. And actually assembly level programming is the task of writing processor specific machine code in mnemonic form. So this assembly level programming is, it is one of the task of writing a processor specific machine code in the mnemonic form. So actually the machine code, or we call it as a one more name for the machine code, is binary code. So the processor does not understand your mnemonics. So what I have written here, move R0, R1. So the processor will not understand that. So this is for your understanding. But for processor, they have given this instruction with some binary code. There is some binary equivalent code available for this. So the processor will understand the binary equivalent code for this instruction, and that is going to execute depending on that binary code. Okay, this is only for your and human understanding we have written. Okay, so that is what we have mentioned here. The task of writing processor specific code in mnemonic form and converting the mnemonics into actual processor instructions and associated data using an assembler. So here the mnemonic means here this move, that is move is a mnemonic. Again if you use add R0, R1, so again this add is a mnemonic. So like that. So what they have mentioned here, actually in assembly level programming, it is the task of writing processor specific machine code in mnemonic form. So like this one, move R0, #0a, and converting that mnemonic into actual processor instructions. So that is, we are converting this machine code. So we are converting this mnemonic code, that is the code in the mnemonic form, move R0, #a, into a binary code or machine language, we can call that, and associated data using the assembler. So for that, converting from that mnemonic to binary code, we are using an assembler here. So assembler acts as a, it is converting that mnemonic form into the machine level language form. So if you consider an example of LPC 2148 instruction, so the instruction here is move R0, #0a. So here hash 0a is a hexadecimal value or hexadecimal equivalent of decimal value 10. Okay, so that is equivalent to 0a. Now what it is going to perform? So this instruction, the hexadecimal value 0a is moved to R0 here. So hash represents the immediate value. So that hash does not copy to R0 here. The only value will be copied. So hash means whatever the constant you are going, whatever the number you are going to write here, so that will be a constant value. So that's why before representing any constant value, we use hash here. And what this instruction is going to perform, that constant value is moved to R0 here. Okay, and you can see that in this instruction mnemonic moves, that is this mnemonic moves hexadecimal value 0a to a 32-bit register R0. We know that this R0 is a 32-bit register, and if you move this 0a value to R0, so what is the value of R0 will be, that is 0x 000000a. So this will be the value available in the register R0. Now here the move R0 is the opcode, that is we call it as a operational code here. Here move R0 is a opcode and 32-bit hexadecimal value, that is 0a is the operand, that is operational data. So this move R0 is a opcode or operational code, and this data value, that is constant value or hexadecimal value 0a is the operand or operational data. And usually the assembly level in assembly level language is written in assembly code. Okay, usually the assembly level language is written in assembly code, and that is saved in assembly file. We save that as a assembly file here. So that assembly file might have the extension file name .asm or file name .s, or some might have file name .src, that is source file. So either they may be having any one of these extensions, that is assembly file value, assembly file extensions. So either it may be .asm, either it may be .s, or either it may be .src. Okay. So if it is in assembly, then it will be in the .asm file, and if they are choosing it as a source file, then it will be in the form of .src or .s. And one important point you have to remember here is, your processor does not understand this assembly language, as I have mentioned earlier. So that is, it understands only the binary numbers or the machine languages. That's why the assembler what we are going to use here, that assembler converts that mnemonic to the processor understandable language or machine language or the binary code, we can call that. So that binary code will be in terms of ones and zeros only, that is binary 1 and binary 0. And for this we need conversion from assembly language to machine level language, and is carried out by some of the sequence operations are there. Some of the sequence operations are required to convert that assembly level language to the machine level language. And what are those sequences we are going to see here. So now here we are going to see how this assembly level language file, so that is .asm file, can be converted to a machine level language or machine or a binary representation of that language we are going to see here. So here in the first point we are going to convert your source file or the .asm file to an object file. So we are converting .asm or .s or it may be .src file. So this we are going to convert these files in the form of .obj, that is .object file. So that is what we are going to see here. If you see that here, this translation from assembly code to machine code is performed by the assembler. So we need somebody to convert this, that assembly level language to machine level language, and who is doing that? So that is done by the assembler here. Okay, the assembler is going to convert this source file to an source file or the assembly file to an object file. Okay, so the main aim of our the main aim of the assembler is to convert that dot source file to .obj file here, and the assemblers for different target machines are different. So if you see some different target machines, the assemblers will be different for different target machines. So that is, if you consider LPC2148, then the assembler will be different for that. Again, if you consider the 8051 microcontroller, again that will be having some different assembler there. And it is common that those assemblers from multiple vendors are available in the market, and for the same target machines. So that is what I am going to say is, the assembler for LPC2148 and assembler for microcontroller 8051 are different. Okay, you cannot combine both the assemblers. So if you are if you are using assembler for LPC2148, you are going to use that assembler for dedicatedly for this target processor only, that is 2148. And if you are using assembler for 8051, you can use that assembler for 8051 only. You cannot mix up this. Okay, so that is not possible. And one more important point is, there are, if you consider the 8051 only, sorry, if you consider the LPC2148, so if you consider this target processor, so this target processor only have many assemblers available from the many market players. So in market there are many developers who will design the assemblers for the same target processor. So that means for the LPC2148 only, you may be having 5-6 assemblers which are developed by the different manufacturers. So they are also, that is also possible there. Okay, and some of the assemblers are freely available, that we should remember. Some of the assemblers are not free, and some of the assemblers are freely available in the internet. You can download that. Okay, so depending on the target processor, some of the assemblers are free and some are not free. And actually what is our aim here? This assembler is going to convert your source file to object file, that is .src2 or .s file to .obj file. So that is the important point we have to remember here, how we are going to convert that file. And the file and the various steps involved in conversion of the program written in assembly language to the corresponding binary or machine level language is shown in the figure. So the various steps involved are, we have shown here. So you can see here the various steps involved while converting the assembly level language to machine level language or the binary representation of that machine level language. So this is what we are going to see here. So what this block diagram represents, it represents an assembly level language to machine level language conversion process. So we are converting the assembly level language, or you have written the code in the assembly level language, and what it is going to perform, this block, it is going to convert that program into an machine level language, or it is going to convert that to a binary code. Okay, the output of this block will be a binary code or machine level language. Input will be assembly level language for this code, for this block. The input will be assembly level language and the output will be binary code. Okay, So from the figure you can see that each source module is written in assembly and is stored as .src or .asm file. So we have two source files here, source file 1, source file 2, and for each source file we have, and that is in the form of .asm or .source files, and that we are going to give it to the assemblers, that is module assemblers. And what is the operation the assembler is performing? It is going to convert that source file to the obj file, that is object file. So at the end of this we are going to get the .obj1 here, .obj2, like that. So sorry, not obj1 and 2, we are going to get the .obj files here. Okay, and after that each file can be assembled separately to examine the syntax error and incorrect assembly instructions. So after that here, once you provide a source file to the assembler, you can see that here. So once you return a source file, we are going to check for the syntax errors which are incorrectly by writing incorrect assembly instructions. So once you have written the dot source files or the program here in assembly level language, we are not directly going for the generating a machine code here. So before that we are checking whether you have written or whether you have made any errors there while writing the instructions. If any errors are there, then you have to correct that, and after that only we are going to pass that to the assembler. Okay, on successful assembling, each source file is corresponding, a corresponding object file is created. So that is for source file 1 in the previous case. So there will be .src file for that. So for that source file we will be getting .obj file separately, and again for source file 2 I am getting a separate obj file, that is .obj file extension we are getting. So on successful assembling we are getting the object file at the end of the assembler part. Okay, and this object file, that is .obj file, can be placed at any code memory location. So you can place this .obj file, that is object file, in any code memory location, and it is responsibility of the linker or locator to assign absolute address for this module. So you can place that obj file in any code memory location, but it is important point that the linker or locator must assign an absolute address for that obj file for this module. Okay, so that is the work of the linker and locator what we have given here. You can see here. So we have a linker and locator here. After object 1 file, object 2 file, we have a linker or locator available. So what it is performing, the once that obj file is generated, so that can be located in any code memory location. Okay, but it is the responsibility of the linker or locator is to assign some absolute address for that module, and this absolute address allocation is done at the absolute object file creation page only. So you can see here. So after the linker and locator we have this block, that is absolute object file. So that absolute object address is given by that absolute address allocation block, and that is at the that is done at the absolute object file creation page only. Okay, so this is how we are going to convert this .source file to .obj file. At the end of this absolute object file we are going to get the .object file with linker and locator generated or assigned absolute address. So at the end of the absolute object file, we will be having the linker or locator assigned address will be there, that is absolute address will be there for that object file. So this is how we are going to convert the source file to the object file in assembly level language. So the next point here is the library file creation and usage. So that this is the second part in the assembly level language development part. So that is the first point we have seen here. So in assembly level language based development, we are going to these are the certain steps we need to follow. So first one is we are going to convert that source file to object file. So that we have done here. The second step here is where the library file creation and usage will be there. So when the linker processes a library, only those object modules in the library that are necessary to create the program are used here. So it will not use all the library files which are available with the processor or controller. Okay. So what this linker will do, so it will link only those library modules which are available which are required for that module. So for which module we need which which library file, so that is linked by the linker or locator. And library files are generated with .lib extension, that is .lib extensions. You might have noticed these, and it is one kind of source code hiding technique. So after generating this .lib extension file, so we can hide this. So this is one of the source code hiding technique, where you are hiding the code by generating a .lib extension file, and that is if you don't want to reveal the source code for other developers. So if you are developing one embedded system, that means there are some other market players or your competitors who are they are eagerly wanting to know what is the product you are going to design, what is the firmware you are going to develop for that product. So in that case, to ensure the security for your source code, so we are going to convert that source file to the library file, that is .lib extension. If you don't, that is if you don't want to reveal the source code for other developers to use this in their applications, usually developers go for creating the .lib file, that is .library file. And what is the importance of linker and locator is here? The linker and locator is another software utility responsible for linking the various object modules in multi-module project and assigning absolute address to each module here. So what is the work of linker and locator here is, so it is linking this linker and locator is linking the various object modules. You can see that in the previous diagram we have two modules available there. You can see here the module 1 and module 2 here in the source file. So what this linker or locator is doing, it is linking the various object modules in multi-module projects. So whenever we have a multi-module projects, that is module 1, module 2, module n. So like if we have some different module projects are available, that is multi-module project available. So in that case we need to link the various object modules. So that is done by the linker and assigning the absolute address to each module. So again we are assigning the absolute address value by the linker only. Okay, and it is the responsibility of the linker to link any external dependent variables or functions declared on various modules and resolve the external dependencies among the modules. So if you are writing some code, so you might have written some external variables. You want to use some variables which is not available in that module. So in that case, it is the responsibility of the linker to link those external dependencies among the modules. So that is, you have to link any external dependent variables or the functions declared on various modules and resolve the external dependencies among the modules. So this is how the linker is resolving the external dependencies among the various modules. Okay, and an absolute object file or module does not contain any relocatable code or data. So that is one important point you have to remember here. So this absolute object file or module does not contain any relocatable code or area. So that is the important point you have to remember here. Okay. And one important point here I want to mention here. All the code and data reside at fixed memory locations only. Okay, that is, the absolute object file is used for creating hex file and for dumping into the code memory of the processor or controller. So after the absolute object file is generated, from the diagram you can see that. So after that, we are there is one block called hex file creation, that is object to hex file converter. So that is converting your absolute object file to an hex file. So that hex file is nothing but it will be having the dot hex extension, and that is nothing but your machine understandable code or the binary code we say. Okay, that is what explained in the third point here, that is object to hex file converter. So once that absolute object file block generates object file which is having the absolute address assigned to it. So after that file is generated, we are going to give that file to the object to hex file converter, and you can see that this is the final step in converting assembly level language to machine understandable language. And here the output of this one will be the dot hex file. Okay, the dot hex file is the representation of the machine code, and it is dumped into the code memory of the processor or controller. So that we have to remember here. So at the end of this process, we are going to get the dot hex file conversion. Okay, we will be having the dot hex file conversion here. And again, so while explaining the part B experiments, I have mentioned that we are going to write the program for, consider I am going to write the program for stepper motor. So how we have written? We have written the code for the stepper motor in C language, that is in embedded C. We have written the stepper motor program, and what we are going to do, we are going to convert that .c file to .hex file. Okay, that we are performing for every part B experiment. We have written the programs in .c extension files, and we are going to convert that .c to .hex. How we are going to convert that? .c file is converted to .obj file, and this .obj file is converted to absolute object file, and that absolute object file is given to the hex converter, that is object file to hex converter. So that will be generating a .hex file, and this .x file we are going to dump it on the target processor. So what is the target processor we are using? LPC 2148. So for particular stepper motor program, we have written particular embedded C program for that. Okay, and that C program we are going to convert it to hex file or .hex file, and that .hex file is we are going to dump it on the target processor LPC2148, and so that we can see the operation of the stepper motor after that. Okay, so this is for every .c extension file we are going to convert that to a .hex file like this. And usually hex files are ASCII files. You might know this. ASCII code is there. Okay, these hex files are usually ASCII files that contain a hexadecimal representation of the target application. So this is very important. These hex files are nothing but the ASCII files only, that are what it contains. It contains the hexadecimal representation of the target application, and this file is created from the final absolute object file using the object to hex file converter utility. So from that block, what is the input we are giving? For that block, absolute object file we are giving, and at the output of that block we are getting the .hex file. Okay, so this is how we are going to get the hex files. And if we see some advantages and disadvantages of using an assembly level language here, some of the advantages are it is efficient code memory and data memory can be used here. So that is memory optimization can be done. So efficient means the developers, if you know the architecture well, and if you know the memory organization well, and if you know the instructions well, then he can write an efficient code for that. So that can be one of the advantage. And high performance here, the optimized code, it not only improves the code memory usage but also improves the total system performance. So that is how this assembly language is going to give you the high performance. And low level hardware access. So this is important. Here the low level language, like accessing in low level programming, here we are going to access the external device specific registers. Okay, and we are going to access the operating system kernel, and we are going to access some device drivers, and we are going to access some low level interrupt routines are there. So if you want to access all of these, so we need that kind of approach there. So that approach is provided by this assembly level language. So that means you can approach any low level of your hardware in this programming. Okay, and code reverse engineering. So this is very important point once again. So code reverse or the reverse engineering is nothing but it is the process of understanding the technology behind the product. So if you have developed one embedded product, so if I am the owner or I am the manufacturer, and you are one of the competitor, or you are one of the and you are also one of the manufacturer, and if you want to develop the same product what I have developed now, so that means you don't know what is there inside, what is the how is the functioning of that embedded product. So to know that, the other market players go for the reverse engineering process. So that means by reverse engineering they are going to know what is the language you have written, what is the architecture you have used, what are the other peripherals you have used, what is the software part or the firmware development approach you have used. So this is nothing but the reverse engineering. Okay, and this can be one of the we can call it this is done by the hackers only to reveal the technology behind your product. Okay, so these are some of the advantages, and disadvantages are high development time. So high development time we need, because to understand this architecture, understand the instruction sets, to understand the memory organization, we need or the developer need some time. So that's what. And so whenever you are going to know the more details of that, so that takes time. So that is about the high development time. And developer dependency. And here the developer dependency means, so if you are one of the developer and I am also one of the developer, so both the developers might be having different idea. Okay, so depending on their own idea, they are going to develop the firmware development here. So that means both will not be unique, and there is no specific set of rules provided to develop this firmware. So that means this is there may be some different approaches for the same embedded product, and that might give you the insufficient results. So that's why that can be one of the disadvantage. And this approach is non-portable. That is, some target applications written in assembly instructions are valid only for that particular family of processors only. So that means if I am writing instructions for LPC 2148, so that means those instructions are particularly used for LPC 2148 only. You cannot use that instructions for the 8051 microcontroller. So like that, they are not portable like high level languages. Okay, so these are the advantages and disadvantages of using an assembly level language based development.